Coming up right now, the newest episode from Carr, Gwyn, and Ode on Three Pagans and a Cat.
What if you came back now to our new world, the city roaring, there on the old peaceful camping place of your red fires along the quiet water? Welcome to Three Pagans Around Grandfather Fire, the 34th episode of Three Pagans and a Cat, recorded with the podcast Around Grandfather Fire. Our opening today is courtesy of 20th century Aboriginal poet and political activist Udgero Nunakel. You may call me Ode.
You can call me Carr. I'm Ode's father.
Merry meet. My name is Gwyn, Ode's mother.
So we're doing something different this episode because we've already recorded this episode. We recorded it at Convocation with Sarenth Odinson and James Stovall, who are the people from the Around Grandfather Fire podcast.
Yes.
You're going to hear that soon. It's already recorded and edited and everything, but we wanted to give you all a little bit of extra stuff because obviously we didn't do our usual, bits.
Friendly banter.
Our banter. Well, we did our banter, but we didn't do our bits.
Right.
Yeah, so you're going to hear a little bit of us like you normally would, and then we'll segue into Around Grandfather Fire.
Yep.
And
then I'll splice these bits in, hopefully. Hopefully I won't just stack them all up at the end, but we'll see how it goes.
Our first commercial today comes from our tiger Lorelei for the Georgia-based shop Otherworld Creations, featuring jewelry, altarpieces, devotional art, and decorative items fashioned out of bones, teeth, jaws, claws, and fur of departed critters. Lorelei believes that these remains have their own energy and spirit, the same way that plants and stone do, and that these can be tapped into and worked with. Whether your assistant is a rat skull spirit idol, rib bone incense burner, or deer antler pendant, most of the remains used in Otherworld Creations are found already dead, and some are traded from hunters who have otherwise discarded these remains. You can follow Otherworld Creations on Instagram at Otherworld_CreationsCo, or find them on Facebook, or you can contact them at otherworldcreationsco@gmail.com for inquiries or commissions.
All right, so this is Three Pagans and a Cat. It's a dual cast?
It's a dual cast.
Yeah.
I like it.
So you may call me Ode.
I'm Carr.
Merry meet. My name is Gwyn.
I am James Stovall.
I am Sarenth Odinson.
And where are you guys from?
We are from the podcast Around Grandfather Fire.
Okay.
So I know, so the big thing, I think, for one of the three-pack people, in particular Ode, who has talked about Sarenth since it Convocation?
It was our Convocation episode.
So episode 3.
You have to understand, Sarenth. When your name comes up in Ode's mind or in her conversation, it's like,
So
I have to tease a
They've
little.
been teasing me about this from the beginning.
So last year at Convocation, you basically changed Ode's entire mindset around the runes.
Yeah. I had just started studying the runes, and I took your rune workshop that you did, and I had never thought about the runes the way you presented them, and I basically had to scrap my whole system and start over.
Oh, you're welcome.
With the new mindset from what I learned from you. So
And talked about you all the way home.
Yeah.
Talked about that class.
Yeah.
And the runes and what Ode learned, and we heard about it several days later.
I cannot take sole credit for that. My elder, Galina Kraskova, was the one that brought me to these understandings. She picked over the outline for that class, produced a lot of really good commentary, and it made me the person I am today.
That's very cool.
Well, now you're passing that down to Ode because that's really changed how Ode does everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, had significant impact.
Yeah.
And then, of
So
course,
thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
we kind of got together because there's a service out there that allows podcasters to try to get guests.
Right.
And
That Carr signed up for without telling anyone.
right, that I signed up for because I was like, well, it would be cool to have guests. Well, our first speaking engagement at MPF.
He just signed.
Last
He
year.
was just like, "We'll teach these classes," and then he told us after they've been accepted.
After they've been accepted, I was like, oh, by the way.
By the way, we're teaching. I was like, what the fuck What do you mean we're teaching? We're not teachers. What are we teaching?
I am, but not this.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Oh my gosh,
you're now
yeah.
forced into this.
But literally, we just were like, what?
But through that service, James contacted me and said, "Hey, we'd be really into this. Sarenth actually listens to your podcast."
Which blew our minds.
And then Ode went absolutely ballistic for about 2 weeks going, "Sarenth listens to our podcast."
And what do you mean he wants to be on it?
We don't know what we're talking about.
Nonsense. I listen to your podcast.
Well, we often say we're
We're
definitely
not experts.
on
Please
this.
please don't take us as experts on anything. Please.
No, but compliments to y'all. Really, every episode is just so packed with information.
thank you.
I really like your format and all the things that you're presenting. It's a really amazing podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
It's been a.
We went back and listened to our early stuff recently because we just hit a year.
Oh, man, do I understand that feeling.
And we were like, our very first episode, we had this whole plan. We're like, every month we were going to
do
cover
different phases of
the
the moon.
different kinds of the moon.
Oh,
Right.
And immediately after the first episode, we never returned to that concept again.
Forgot about it.
Because our second episode was neo-paganism and sexual abuse because the Isaac Bonowitz thing had just come out.
yeah.
And we were like, oh gosh, I guess we need to cover this.
Yeah.
And then we did convocation.
And then we did convocation, and so we just never got back to it.
Never.
And I'm an ADF member, so I'm like, oh gosh, I've at least got to talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And we started the Wheel of the Year, and then it was building your book, and it was like...
Yeah, for a while there, we always knew what we were talking about because we had started 2 series like at the very beginning of our podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know what the,
So
I don't know
Wheel
what
of the
we were
Year,
thinking.
basically, it's every 6 weeks or so we're talking about that because we want to get it out 2 weeks before the event actually happens.
So people can get the content before the holiday happens.
Right. And those have by far been our biggest listenership.
Wow.
Normally we average 3,000, 3,500 per episode. And those are around 5 to 6. We have one that's at 8 now.
That's
at
Yule, I think.
8,000.
I think the Yule episode,
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
crazy.
And
People really like those
go
episodes.
back and listen like it makes no
Months
sense
later.
to me. Months later, like that one's like Yule happened already. People,
Right?
don't
Like,
worry.
people are still listening to it.
We get listeners who say, I just got done marathoning your entire list, and we're like, are you okay?
Right? This
Yeah.
Originally, people would be like, we marathoned your whole thing. I would be like, well, it's 8 episodes. That's a work day. Now it's like 31 episodes. I'm like, are you okay?
Right.
Have you been sick recently? Do you have a very long commute?
Yeah.
Because our episodes average about an hour 10.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit longer than the norm. Our first 2 episodes were like 40 minutes, and then everything else since then has been like,
Expanded.
how can we
Then
trim these down?
we started adding in stuff. So we were like, well, we'll start reviewing things.
Right.
And then we started doing the little segments.
Yeah.
Ours are getting around an hour and 40 minutes,
Hour
2
and 40.
hours
Yeah.
at this point in time because we've been really blessed with a lot of really amazing guests lately. So we're doing deep dives. We're like, hey, the stuff that you never get to talk about anywhere else, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And so 2 hours later, we're like, well, we should stop. We could probably go another hour, but we probably should stop.
Yeah.
And
I mean, our goal is 60 minutes, but
we never ever hit it.
never hit it, and
We hit that.
we're almost always over. And actually,
Our
several
last
recently
episode,
been-
we were 2 hours long. I managed to cut it down in the edit to an hour and a half.
yeah.
that's pretty impressive in its
Yeah.
own right. Really.
But let's get around.
Yeah, let's talk about Around Grandfather Fire.
Around Grandfather Fire. How did you guys get started doing this? What is the premise of your podcast?
So this is all Jim's fault.
Yeah. So basically, the short version is that I'm friends with Andrea Vitovitz, and he had a podcast for a long period of time called Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole. But the marathon of a podcast, especially a weekly podcast, gets to you pretty heavily. And so at some point in time, he said, you've been on several times as a guest. Would you consider having your own show and alternating with me? And so that was The Jaguar and the Owl. That was the show I started, and that was on Pair X. It was an hour long, and it was pretty good. And Sarenth became a frequent guest, and I'm like, we're such good friends anyway. Okay, you're just going to be the co-host. Why not? This makes it a lot easier. We together.
So you were drafted. Is what I hear.
The bus method. Right.
Yeah. You were voluntold.
So we did that for 2.5, 3 years,
3 years.
something like that, and then we kind of hit a burnout point ourselves.
Sure, yeah.
We took about 2 years off, I think,
Yep,
roughly.
a 2-year hiatus.
And I said it's time to get started again, but this time we're getting away from a structured format. We are going to talk about shamanism and animism and spirituality, but I want free reign. I want to be able to swear because that's an important part of our practice.
Sure, yeah.
And we're going to talk
Ours
about
too.
books and comic books and movies and everything else because I came to the realization that at Michigan Pagan Fest, we'd have these amazing conversations around the sacred fire. You'd get people wandering in, wandering out, other elders, other teachers, and you never knew which direction the conversation was going to go, but there's always these really powerful lessons in it. And I said, let's see if we can replicate that. So that's what we're aiming for.
That's very cool.
So you're
Yeah.
live on mic and you're normally via like Skype or something?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've never done the Skype.
Well, we
interviews.
tried.
We tried once
it,
with
did
Bill
not
L.
work.
Oh, right.
From Pagans in Need, but it just
Not
ended
get
up
it to-
being a
We could not get the
a
Skype
cluster.
to work.
yeah.
Skype is its own challenge.
Yeah.
You have things drop out. The main editing I do is editing out those drop-outs. Because they do happen. And then we've had important lessons along the way there, too. In the last few episodes, we have discovered that Sarenth and I really need to video chat during these Skype conversations. Because we were trying to do it just by audio cues, and we kept ending up with those moments where I was expecting him to talk, he was expecting me to talk. So now we have the little video up, so our guests can see us too. But like, and I see him lean into the mic, I know he's going. I kick back and
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool.
We're kind of weird because we do this. It's one mic on a table,
Yeah.
and we all three sit around it. And if you've listened to it on headphones, like Ode comes out of both ears,
'Cause I
Gwyn
usually
comes
sit
out
right
of
here.
the left ear, I come out of the right ear because we do the stereo mix down through the mic. The mic
Yep.
just does a stereo thing. It's how it's built.
And then we just talk over each other.
Right, yeah, we talk over each other.
we do that even with the
we're very
video, so
Yeah.
I understand.
So the funny thing is, like, we've had people start asking for transcripts.
Oh, God.
And you cannot machine transcript our show because
Too much
we
over
talk.
talk.
Yeah, we talk over.
And
each other.
it's expensive to get a program, to get someone to do it for you.
Yeah.
So I finally said, okay, YouTube will transcribe it, but you
Sort
have
of.
to, sort of. So you have to. We are uploading some of our episodes. Eventually, we will get them all up there. And so if they go to YouTube now,
They can turn on the
they
closed
can
caption.
turn on the closed caption. The closed
Oh,
caption
nice.
is on there,
Awesome.
and then it'll give you an option for transcripts. But it's all jumbled, so you have to kind of really figure out
Maybe
who's
because
edit it
what.
down.
because it's just so difficult to
Yeah.
machine
It
translate.
Right.
kind of is like a jumble of words.
Yeah. We have to figure out a better solution.
We do.
I actually talked to a
trans. You can even confuse Google.
Yeah.
That is a point of pride, I think.
But I figured, hey, at least it's there.
Right, it's
Yeah.
something.
We've had some listeners saying, hey, we'd really like transcripts because I'm
Well, I want to
listening
study it more.
I want to
Yeah.
study it more. There's some things that you said that I want to.
You talk too fast and I can't take notes.
Exactly. So I'm like, YouTube, babies, that's your best option right now.
I did just talk to a transcriptionist today, so hopefully
Yeah, so
we'll
hopefully
get
we'll figure something
Yeah, we'll
out.
figure out something. And I don't know if you all know Corvus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the lady who does editing for all of his books and stuff also does transcription service.
Oh, very nice.
So I was like, all right, well,
Yeah.
we'll
So
at
we're
least
less inclined to get all the language and little funny,
right, yeah.
specific words. That
Yeah,
we
all the
use wrong,
terminology.
so-
Yeah, we had to go explicit on our podcast
We
because
did.
iTunes emailed me and went, "It's either that or we're going to take you
We're
down."
gonna
I was like,
dump
I'll
your
go.
ass. And we're like, well, fuck you. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go explicit
We'll
and call
go
it good.
explicit.
I could edit all the swearing out, but it would be really awkward.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would.
Yeah.
Plus, I think it just, we're just being ourselves.
Right.
And we were talking about that earlier before we turned the mic on. We got started doing this whole thing because we would have these conversations at home, exactly like what you're hearing on the mic.
Yep.
That's
Except
what-
even more strident, usually.
Right. yeah.
exactly. And so we thought, and so Carr was just like, well, what do you think if we just do this on a mic and share it with people and maybe they'll get something out of it? And
And
so we were
I
like, okay.
thought, like, maybe a whole 20 people on Earth were going to give
Oh,
a
yeah.
shit. And I was proven wrong almost immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't know where you people came from, but I appreciate your presence.
Now, do you all do a Patreon?
We don't currently. We have
Okay.
talked about it.
about
We
it.
did one in the past for the previous show. Right now, we're just trying to sort that out a little bit. I
Okay.
saw you guys have had great success with your
we
Patreon.
have.
Yeah, we really have.
We are just
Yeah.
A lot more than I had ever expected.
Oh yeah, we love all of our listeners. Our pride is what we call them, and we are
Got all
so-
those cat names.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all those cat names. But we're just so blessed with the people that have chosen to support us. And every time we get a new one, we're just like, thank you so much, because I feel like we can't thank people enough
Yeah.
because they don't know how helpful that is to us to keep the podcast going.
It's not inexpensive to do a podcast.
No, it's
Right
very
about
expensive.
You know, there's the server.
Right.
Because we have to pay Fireside to keep the website and to keep the archive up.
Yep.
And
there's the the software, and then if we want to do anything like this, if we want to come to a pagan festival, and do interviews with well-known authors, that costs money.
Right. Yeah.
And so our Patreon patrons help offset that cost.
Yeah.
And it means so much.
I think
thank you again, patrons.
we'd love for it to, ultimately be this is what we do.
Right, I heard that you guys are getting closer to that, though.
Oh, it's only been a year.
But still, I know you guys have talked about getting a lot closer to that dream goal.
We're getting closer to our first goal. Which is Ode working full-time on the podcast and going from a bi-weekly format to a weekly format.
That'd be amazing.
That's what we're talking
Which
about.
especially early on, we had a lot of people asking for us to upload more frequently, and we were like, we can't do that right now.
Right.
Yeah.
We have life.
Yeah.
But I'm no longer working an outside job. So that frees me up to do more.
Right now, she's writing the Building Your Book.
Yeah, I'm writing a book based on Building Your Book
Very cool.
series. So we are hoping that if people want to continue to support, that if they want us to go to a weekly format, that,
We'll get there.
we'll get there.
That's how that happens.
Exciting.
Yeah.
But we're about halfway there in terms of the goal we put on for our Patreon was $750 a month. And we're at 300 something.
Yeah.
360 something,
Yeah.
Really?
I know, right?
Yeah.
When we started the Patreon, I told them,
amazing.
guys, we're going to get a maximum of $50 a month. Just be fine with it.
And we
Don't
were.
expect to make money on this.
Yeah,
and then the money kept coming in, and I was like, all right, I take it back, I guess.
I know you all use Anchor.
Yeah.
We're using Fireside. We're not sponsored by Fireside, but you guys should take a look at it. And anybody who podcasts, quite honestly.
Yeah, honestly, we've been really, really satisfied with the service. It's constantly updating
I'm curious
new
what's going to
features.
happen with Anchor, because they were just bought out by Spotify.
They were indeed,
yes.
So I'm
That's right.
really curious
Yeah.
how that's going to change with their
Fireside has Spotify integration, so it gets cross-posted.
It gets
to
cross-posted
Spotify.
automatically to Spotify, just about to everywhere, quite honestly. Stitcher, I mean, they all
It's great,
have
we don't
it,
have to worry about it.
We had somebody who wanted to listen to yours who was struggling to find it
Yeah,
on
who
Google.
did.
Yeah, I posted a link up.
Yes,
But
thank you.
Usually, if you search around Grandfather Fire, it pops up on
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first.
Yeah.
It's the first link on Google if you search the.
Which, by the
name of the
By the
podcast.
way, we should say we love your podcast.
Oh,
yeah,
You
very
should know
much.
that, because you can tell we talk a lot. So jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't wait for a spot. Just make one.
Make a spot. Just make a spot.
Yeah, if you've listened at all to the podcast, you know that we talk over each other, so
Exactly.
feel free to talk over us.
Our second commercial comes from our Tiger Reel for Relic Designs, spelled RELLIK Designs. Relic Designs produces wire wrap jewelry from amethyst points wrapped with coils of silver to bracelets of braided bronze and silver chainmail links. Reel works in all types of metals from copper to titanium and accepts custom commissions. You'll find Relic Designs on Facebook at Relic Designs or on Instagram at relic.designs. There are a couple of imposter Relic Designs out there, so make sure you get the dots and the spacings right and accept no substitutions.
When did you all get to convocation? We got here Wednesday.
Well, we write yesterday afternoon.
Yesterday afternoon.
3 o'clock-ish, I guess it was. 3 or 4, something like that.
Had anything entertaining or interesting go on so far?
I had 2 really, really good back-to-back death and dying workshops I went to.
Okay.
Names escape me right now, but the first one was on being a death doula.
Oh.
And the second one was on end-of-life care and the processes that you need to go through in order to make sure that your wishes are observed, and some of the legal requirements and how DNRs work. So back to back, it was a really powerful time to listen into how the death doula system works here. We were one of the first adopters. We were the first 3 adopters in the States for the death doula certification. Now it's not required yet, but there's work being done where death doula is actually a certified process to fill in the gaps between hospice care and lawyers and families.
Gotcha.
And funeral homes. So it provides a really powerful method of healing and integrating information. So it's one of the things I'm very deeply interested in, given my work with Odin and Hela. And so it's one of those things I'm dipping my toes in and going, I wonder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That sounds very interesting.
The end of life care, none of us are getting out of here alive.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, folks. Spoiler alert. Entropy wins.
Knowing what you want and how you want it to go off, and having this is the disposition of my body, this is how I want to be taken care of, these are the ceremonies, these are the people to contact in the ceremonies, this is where my stuff goes. Having all that and having that dialogue now, not just with your relatives, but with your friends, making sure everybody's on the same page, and then doing that conversation again and again and again was really emphasized in that workshop. It was fantastic.
Gotcha.
I think it sounds fantastic because last year in May I was diagnosed with cancer, and so I had to have surgery. And during that process of getting ready for the surgery, they had me fill out a whole packet of information on what are my wishes if something should happen during surgery, what I want, to be put on life support.
And you had to have us witness it.
Yep, they had to witness it, and it's now in the hospital system in the state of Michigan. Honestly, it had never occurred to me to do that.
Keep in mind that if you have a DNR on file, that may not transfer between hospitals. That's something I found out from that workshop.
Gotcha.
Kudos to the workshop folks. They were really clear that if you have a DNR or living will or any kind of advance directive, you need to double, triple check with every single facility that you are in, no matter what the length of time
To make
is.
sure it's there.
Make sure the handoff's there.
And Sarenth had a pretty good handle on a lot of this stuff going in because he had worked at a funeral home. So he was able to know just listening how quality level the class was and what good information there was, which was extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Last night I went to the White Face of Hell class in the evening, and one of the things somebody who was an attendee brought up was the fact that not all states honor DNRs.
Nope.
In fact, you can have a living will, a DNR, and your family, one person in your family can challenge it, take it to court, and then that person ends up getting put on life support, even though that was not their intention or their wish.
Making sure your POAs are in order, your power of attorney. That is number one. That is number one because anybody with that power who's in line, say something happens to both you and the car at the same time, and you'd be the first one in line. So you'd be the decision maker at that point. Well, you can't make that decision. Now's the time while you're all still mentally well and healthy to say, hey, I know I can't handle this. Give the POA to somebody else.
Right.
Well, and that's important, really, in the neo-pagan community because so many people are coming from families that are Christian.
That's right.
Yeah, this is the thing.
So you might be better off selecting someone else that has aligned beliefs within the pagan community and making sure those powers of attorney are lined up. Before something happens, or else you
could end up with a Christian burial.
Exactly.
Well, because there's every chance that I'll have to fight the rest of y'all's families to get your wishes met. Because they're all Christian. I'm willing to have that fight because I don't care if I burn bridges.
Your brother will stand up.
But that's a fight I'll probably have to have at some point.
Certainly with my mother.
Exactly.
Because my mother would want a salvation message taught during it, just in case.
Right.
My son went to hell, but you don't have to. And here's how.
Please come up to the casket now and renew your vows to Christ.
Oh my God!
So after this,
that's why I want to be on a. I know we can't do it legally anymore, but I want to be on a raft and have arrows, shot and go in flames, and then sent down the river.
I don't think that's going to work.
Oh, but I want that.
On the other hand, my mother wants her ashes sprinkled all over the Capitol grounds.
Which is illegal.
Totally illegal. We're like, sure, we'll figure that out.
Cut a hole in the pants pocket.
It was an accident. I don't know what to tell you.
Although, to be fair, I went to a memorial service for a lady who she wanted her ashes put at the flower pots at a mall. And so somebody did that. They did that. Her family, they each got, portions of her ashes, and they all went and they just like, do. You're not watching me as I dump this into this flower bed here.
It's fertilizer.
I cannot imagine liking the mall enough to do that.
Apparently she was a shopaholic. Right. It was like that was her therapy. She would go there. So I was like, okay,
different
lady,
strokes for different folks.
You want.
Yeah, exactly.
If that's important to you.
I cannot imagine wanting to do that.
Some folks go to Helheim, some folks go to Briarwood.
I think at one point, I talked with my children about having some kind of a treasure hunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we had a whole plan for a while there of we were going to bury you and Carr in separate graveyards and set up a scavenger hunt to get to one to the other.
Nice.
That could go in either direction.
Yep.
You'd start at one grave, follow the scavenger trail across the United States to the other one.
It's like geocaching for the dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not at all our favorite places.
I told my wife I want a headstone that says, "Here lies Shaman Jim. If you make good offerings, he might help you." And I said, this is good for at least a century of entertainment. Like 100 years of laying there, like, wow, these kids are really crazy asses. I don't know what's going on here, but this is fun.
A chicken, actually.
I'll make it into all the haunted Michigan books. It'll be great. I love it.
That's fabulous.
So when I was in college, I lived behind a mortuary.
Sweet.
And I was friends, or actually I was in high school at the time, and I was friends with the son whose parents owned the mortuary. This is in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Yeah, we went to the same college. So
Right.
I know a couple of guys who worked there.
And so every once in a while, Jason would run over to my house and knock on the door, and he goes, "A Kennedy has died. You want to come watch us drain the blood?" And I'm like, "It's a Kennedy, sure, you know." Of course, I'm going to go see that.
Let's go watch some famous blood drain.
Yeah.
And then, like, I've had some of the weirdest jobs in the entire world. So
Yes.
the majority of my career has been entertainment industry.
But in the gaps.
But in the gaps between, like, an entertainment job here and an entertainment job here,
Because he had to, provide for his family.
right? I took the one that they love the most
The
is
children,
that
yeah.
I took a job as a landscape architect
Oh, excellent.
at a perpetual care cemetery, which basically meant gravedigger. So.
I like to add that one to the. I like to give like the list and then add that one at the end. Just tack it on there.
And people always
Record
go,
label
"What?"
owner, DJ, blah 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 blah, gravedigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ode has never
And
forgiven.
I just like to watch the double takes.
Ode has never forgiven Carr because he had promised that she could go to plant the pansies.
Plant the pansies at the
Cemetery,
gravesides.
yeah.
Yeah. When I was a kid.
And then never happened.
Yeah, because I got another job and we moved. So it was like,
You never make a promise to a 5-year-old and don't keep it.
This was a source of strife in our family for many moons.
but probably, I mean, you worked at a funeral home.
I did.
So the weirdest thing I've ever had is we lowered the casket into the ground, and at that point, it becomes cemetery property, no longer funeral home property.
Right.
And then the family decided they wanted the jewelry.
At which point,
Right. So I climbed down in the hole, opened it, took off her jewelry very carefully. She was an elderly lady, so she had very thin skin. And so, you have to be like super
Very
careful
delicate,
taking
yeah.
everything off because you don't want to like traumatize the family.
Right. By breaking
but
off
yeah.
Here you go.
Here's the ring.
And some
Fingers
skin.
going with it.
Here.
Somebody give me a can of Crisco.
Here, let's make a hand of glory.
de-gloved grandma.
So by far that was the weirdest experience I had ever had, like, was to just climb down in this grave and like, okay, I'm
I
good.
did take the opportunity to go,
Oh, that would have been brilliant.
Too early for that. That was in the 90s. So the book was out, obviously,
book,
but
right.
I wouldn't have had a voice
But
to go with
that
Gollum
classic
at that point.
Smeagol.
The
Yeah.
Smeagol voice. That was brilliant, by the way. Brilliant. Oh, precious.
And the opportunity to do the pansies is still there. Sarenth does a huge amount of time caring for graveyards around the area.
Oh, there you go.
Well, there you go.
your local graveyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have one very
Right
nearby.
outside,
Yeah, we could.
So
actually.
I now manage a manufactured home community.
Oh, okay.
And it literally, like, right out front of it is a graveyard for a
Belongs to the
for a
Catholic
Catholic church.
Yeah.
Very active
it-
one, I might add.
It literally
Spiritually speaking.
just had a chain link fence around it, but
Yeah.
it connects to the playground
Yeah.
Of course it does.
for the community. And
The kids were climbing the fence.
Yeah, kids were climbing the fence and jumping over and walking through the graveyard to like go get the school bus, and so that one of my first
Got a real
things.
respectful air.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of my first things was to put up this vinyl 8-foot tall fence around it.
Privacy fence, yeah.
And I called the church and I said, hey, I want to put up this fence. And they go, oh, thank God. Please put it up. But it was more of for me, it was more of a respect for the families who are coming to intern their loved ones, not having to watch a bunch of kids running around on a playground cussing and throwing stuff and,
You didn't have to listen to ghosts and spirits go, damn you kids, get off of my car!
Exactly. Oh my goodness.
Gwyn's Garden Gems.
Thank you. That was lovely.
You're welcome.
Okay, what I'm talking about today is actually a suggestion from Ode in honor of the whole fire theme.
The around
grandfather fire theme. And that's fireweed. The technical name or Latin name is Cochia scoparia. The interesting thing about fireweed, because I didn't know anything about it, so I did some research. The interesting thing is that it grows best on burnt soil.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? And so it's very much connected to the element of fire. And of course, Ode is going, I knew that.
Now, hold on. We have to explain why Ode is so proud of this. Go ahead.
I used to play Sim Park. It was part of my homeschool regimen. To play Sim Park and Sim Farm and learn about ecology and stuff. So among other things, I learned that when my park burned down, or parts of it were controlled burned, I could plant fireweed there to lure in elks to support my growing mountain lion population.
There you go. A little lesson from Sim Park and Sim Farm. Yes, it grows in burnt areas, very dry soil. It loves the sun. So, it definitely wants to have, in fact, my understanding is the color of the flowers, which starts out as kind of a fuchsia over time, and with the direct sunlight, by the time late fall comes around, it gets a crimson color, which is why it's become known as fireweed. What's interesting to me too is that how it propagates and feeds birds and all that kind of stuff, is that as it dries, when it's getting ready to seed, the wind will snap it off at the roots and it'll become a tumbleweed. And so it spreads its seeds way for both the birds to eat and for itself to
continue
growing and find a new space. So I thought that was kind of cool. And it does like to grow on poor ground. So even if it's not burnt ground, anything that is like requiring more nitrogen or things like that,
that isn't supporting other plants.
Right, it isn't supporting other plants well. And what it can do is if you plant fireweed there, it actually helps to secure the topsoil so that more nutrients will come into that ground, and you can later plant other flowers and types of plants there. So it's actually really good. It cleans the soil, like if there's contaminants or something, and that's what's causing the
it's basically a restorative plant.
It is a restorative plant. It's all about cleaning and propagating the soil, basically.
And it brings in your elk.
It brings in your elk. That's right. And because of that, and because of its connection to fire and its just overall properties, it's also really good for healing and spell work. Good for emotional healing and spiritual healing. It's great for shadow work, because what it does is it's anything basically that you want to burn away old habits, old ways of life, so that types of thing. So it's excellent for any type of healing or shadow work if you want to incorporate fireweed into that. Like if you wanted to use some of the flowers to create an amulet, or if you wanted to use some of the flowers on your altar or to dress a candle, that kind of thing. It was actually introduced, it's a Eurasian flower. It was introduced to the United States in the 1900s with immigrants who came from Eurasia, but it actually has been used for thousands of years, I guess, in Eurasia as well as in France for food and for medicine. The other good thing about that you can use fireweed for magically or emotionally, spiritually, it's good for PTSD sufferers. If you want to use it in magic to help deal with that kind of anxiety, anger, PTSD, it enhances connection with spirit.
Okay.
So it's very good for if you want to work with spirit guides, anything of that nature. Again, it's really excellent for spiritual and emotional
spirit
healing.
guiding.
Yeah. Exactly. So
I'm only half joking. I genuinely think if you worked with fireweed, you would start seeing elks.
I think so too, actually. And the key words to think of when you think of fireweed are love, restoration, fresh start, and healing.
That makes sense, given all its ecological
It's ecological and its connection to the fire element and things like that. And then if you want to grow fireweed, what you do is you take the seeds and you'll soak the seeds for 24 hours. And you want to give it just a light cover, and you want it in the sun because it's the sun.
It needs the sun.
And it needs the sun. It needs that heat to germinate the seeds. And then once you've germinated them, you space them 1 foot apart from each other, and it basically grows into a 5-foot hedge.
Yeah, it's a tall plant.
It's a tall plant. Beautiful flowers.
Yeah, they're very, very pretty.
Flowers are stunning. They're beautiful flowers. I think it would be honestly, I think I want to
do... If you got a yard with shitty land, you should make yourself a privacy hedge out of fireweed.
And I mean, I'm thinking of some space in our yard that's kind of dead and needs some newness,
trash left on it.
Trash left on it from previous owners or whatever. It would be a great place to restore some ground.
So that's it for Gwyn's Garden Gems.
That was
lovely.
Thanks. So that is some of the stuff that you've done is gone to these classes. Have you gone to any classes?
Yeah, I went to one with Jackie Smith last night about
ethics
and paganism and leadership. So that was pretty interesting. I think that's a big topic that has to be explored a lot more, especially with a lot of the things that are going on. I made the conscious choice of going in. Sarenth and I have talked about this topic a lot in depth. We have discussion groups in Jackson, and we've talked about it on the podcast and that sort of thing. But I made the conscious decision when I walked into the room, especially a lot of the demographic was female. So I made the choice. I'm like, here's an hour and a half where I am a cis-normal white male. I'm going to shut my mouth and listen. That's what I did for that hour and a half. And I thought it was a really good structure, though. There was a lot of back and forth conversation. It wasn't a class so much as a conversation and some thoughts about where an ethical guideline, what it would go and what it would look like, the fact that it would be completely voluntary, but what kind of things should be included. And the conversation, I think, is going to be ongoing. So.
Yeah, Ode went to that not because I would say we don't feel like we're in leadership, but I think other people think we are.
We've gotten enough feedback from listeners who are very, very new to paganism, who are listening to the podcast and using it as a primary source, that I felt like I needed to at least attend. Because I don't have any leadership training.
Right.
I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
I'm still panicked that I have students. I'm like,
right?
Years into the process, I'm like, holy smokes, man!
So like, I don't have students. I'm not training anyone.
But there are.
Exactly. But like in a diffuse way through the podcast, I kind of am.
And we teach classes.
Yeah, that's technically true.
Yep.
That is technically true.
And we're in the process of writing a book.
I guess that's also true.
So I'm just saying, and so this is my struggle.
I stumbled into this, and I'm still not comfortable here.
I'm still there.
Ode's whole thing was, we'll do this podcast. We'll do like 3 or 4 of them, and then we'll realize it was worthless, and we'll give it up and move on.
I thought we would get bored.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though. I don't know if you guys have found this with your experience over the years as podcasters, but it's very interesting to come up with topics and then do the research and then have the conversation. And I'll go back and listen, after a few months to just go, what did we say? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. We had a really interesting conversation, and I can build actually even from what we talked about.
Right.
And then that spurs conversation with our listeners, because they give comments and they give their thoughts on the topic or their experiences, or they ask questions,
Well,
and the way our Patreon and Discord work is, so if somebody signs up at Patreon Hunter level or above, so that's $10 a month or above, they get to listen live as they're recorded, and there's a question and answer thing, so they can ask questions live as we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so...
And we've gotten... they've spurred a lot of good conversation that way. Yeah,
so,
it's been really valuable.
Right. Well, Sarah, you want to talk about our favorite email that we were ever received from a listener. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
So this gentleman named Brian, all the way from Denmark, he emailed us rather out of the blue once we started talking about Northern tradition and heathen Slavic things. He said, "Hey, so I've come into starting working with these burial mounds, and I'd like some guidance on how to do that." And I'm sitting here, and Jim hands me the email. handshakes it to me. I'm like, oh shit. Wow. I mean, because he's asking about how to take care of his own, and I mean, him and his family lived on this land. He's asking me to take care of his ancestors.
Yeah.
That's a huge responsibility. It was like, oh hell. Okay, I mean, we took a lot of time on and offline to talk about how we're going to approach it, because, I mean, that's a huge weight.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of his, what do we do to advise him? Wow, you know. And so that for me, it's one of my favorite interactions.
Right.
And he's been a good friend since.
Let's say 3 weeks to a month later, we started getting all these photos of these ancient burial mounds that he's taking care of now, and the landscaping he's done, the offerings that he's left. He's come back to us a couple times with clarification questions on, here I'm going to a burial mound now that's not in the area where I live. How should I approach that one? And we've had those conversations. So it's like you don't mean to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a leader, I'm a teacher. It's just all of a sudden you realize that you know maybe something that someone else doesn't. It's the whole point is to help them get one piece of information they might not have had. If you can do that, it's success. It's amazing because like a show like yours, I think what's really important, I remember my early days in paganism, right? Who do you trust?
Right.
Right.
And a lot of times, you know, I could pick a random book out of the back of Green Egg and hope it was good.
Right, yeah.
I could
When
talk
Green
to
Egg
some-
existed.
Yeah, when Green Egg existed, I could talk to some random person I met somewhere at, Crazy Wisdom and hope they knew what they were talking about.
Right.
And I think the value of like podcasts is they can hear our voices, which to a degree helps them hear our experience. And I don't think any of us are saying that we're the big experts. But
Right.
a lot of times we can help you sort out, like Sarenth and I, the main body of our show is about shamanism. And as you know, that is like such a word right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
The conversation,
uses it for
yeah.
everything. These are my shamanic crackers. I wish that was an exaggeration. I wish that was not true. But, and so it's like we have big conversations about what is shamanism? What is its role? Do we even actually consider ourselves shaman? Which is a conversation that we've had. It's one of those things. And just like you guys, we have to share our experiences. And that's a huge part of helping other people sort out their paths.
In the pagan communities, we privilege, and I think this is an outgrowth of Protestant Christianity in this country in general. We privilege the written word, and oral traditions are, oh, how quaint.
Yeah.
Primitive. Meanwhile, I'm like, okay, look, the Eddas were written down by a Christian lawyer,
Right.
which were based off of oral tradition. We don't know what we've lost.
Right.
So let's be real.
And he was probably coming from a biased point of view.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Odin came from Troy. No. Right. So, I mean, that's actually an active thing that I'm happy the community, between podcasts and between YouTube videos and things like that, I'm glad the community is finally starting to nail this, because you aren't going to find all the experts in books. You can't.
Yeah.
And books are a limited medium.
Yeah.
I mean, just like audio, just like video, but between learning styles and between all the things that you can get from listening to somebody's voice. I mean, there's a really, truly magical quality to writing, and just as magical a quality there is to the voice.
Yeah.
I agree.
And we privilege the written word so much. And I say that as a writer.
Right.
So,
We just did a storytelling episode recently where we retold myths in our own words. And I thought, like, part of the power of that was that we were saying them.
Yeah.
Right.
Not that we weren't reading them, we weren't rewriting them and just like disseminating those. There are hundreds of rewritten variations of the myths. There's something different about presenting it to someone in your own voice. The way my inflection changes when I'm talking about a specific action, or the way
How many cuss words you have in
how
it?
many cuss words I have in it.
And injecting humor where someone else might not have seen it, or drama, or whatever. You're bringing your interpretation of that myth into reality by speaking it, and that can resonate with other people.
Yeah, so we decided we were going to do the storytelling series kind of interspersed randomly.
I like that a lot.
So the first one was shenanigans.
Yeah.
So it's all the shit the gods got up to,
Right.
basically. So it was a lot of fun to tell those stories.
Yeah.
I find too, like with the podcast, the power that we have is that all of us have is that there's a lot of written material, and especially like if you're looking at Northern traditions, for example, there's a lot of books that cover the myths, right?
Right.
And we had a conversation with Galena recently. You know, a lot of people are familiar with the term unverified personal gnosis.
Right.
Well, the thing is, with a podcast like this, then we can start getting into peer corroborated personal gnosis, which means we can start with our voices sharing, hey, if I've had this experience with Loki, and this person in California, and this person in Australia, and this person over here, we've all had the same experiences without ever talking to each other before, then these can be like new lore that we're actually generating.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've said this on the podcast already. A bunch, probably. It was all new once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't come down from the sky perfectly formed already. Someone wrote it down once.
Or spoke it. Or,
Exactly.
you know,
Originally,
Originally,
people told these stories to
told
each
the
other,
stories.
and eventually someone wrote it down. And now, because of academia, we've decided that authenticity is correlated to antiquity, and it's not.
And I think there's also, especially when you think of podcasting, there's a lot of people who don't like to read.
Yeah.
You know, so they listen to audiobooks.
Yep.
In this case, you're listening to people talk about their things that they've learned, the knowledge that they've gleaned, the experiences through their own practice. You can learn not only from books or the audiobooks, but also just from listening to others.
Right. I listen to a lot in my car and at work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's...
I think we have a lot of listeners who are beginners in the craft. They get ideas which direction to go to or where to explore, because a lot of them are like, well, I don't know where the fuck to go here.
And that's
A lot
one
of
reason
people
why
don't
we
even know
do
where to
reviews
start.
too.
Yeah, they don't know where to
Yeah.
start.
Is that, you know, we're reviewing a book or we're reviewing a product or something like
Yeah.
that, so that they at least have somebody else who's explored that ahead of time. And if we don't like it,
We'll say it's trash.
we'll tell you we don't like it. You know, we don't.
I think I gave something a 1 star pretty early on. I was just like, don't read this trash book.
So we don't.
It's
I mean, we don't pull
nonsense.
punches on it. We just say, don't. It's not
Yeah.
worth your time. It's not worth your effort, or it's worth your effort if you're in this particular
Right.
place,
Yeah.
or so.
I would like to say, though, we rarely give more than 4 stars, but we have this week given 5 stars to Witch Doctor Utu,
Jason Mankey.
for the books that we talked to them about, because we had a
They're good
chance to
books,
read
yeah.
those books,
Okay.
and they're brilliant. They
Yeah.
really are. Very well researched, interesting topics.
We're gonna
Yeah,
get.
it's weird to get.
too.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird to give 5-star reviews.
It
Yeah.
is.
I felt weird doing it. I was like, ooh,
5 stars.
I don't know that I've ever done that before.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then we
There
started.
probably are flaws.
And then
Just
we
not-
started
they're
the
just not bothering
random,
me.
like Odestone Corner and
Yeah.
Gwyn's Garden Gems.
Yeah.
Just kind of, I don't know, like
People asked for them.
Yeah,
Because I
people-
kept breaking off to talk about rocks
right.
Yeah.
in the middle of an episode.
Well, we started Gwyn's Garden Gems because we did an abbreviated herbalism episode, and somebody was like, not enough, I need more info. And so somebody
One of our
said-
listeners.
one of our
Tally.
listeners,
Yeah, Tally
Tally.
Oil.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tally was like, well, why don't you just make a segment and then you can talk about
Different herbs.
individual
Yeah.
herbs and what you can do with them.
So rather than throwing culpepper at them, you're actually like providing a service.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a huge. That's a huge thing for especially for especially for folks who either can't throw the money down for a culpepper.
Yeah, which,
or
oh my
for
God.
any of the other numerous tomes out there.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to know what X, Y, and Z plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So it's a new herb every week.
Yeah.
It's a new or every 2 weeks. It's
Yeah.
a new stone every 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
then for some reason everybody decided I should have a segment 2.
Just
and
for
that's-
completeness.
yeah, and that's where the recipes thing came in.
Yeah.
So just because I talk about food because I'm, fat. And I really like food. And I really like to cook. I don't do it often.
Yeah.
Because for
Because it
me,
becomes an ordeal.
yeah, for me, cooking is a day experience. Like, I need an entire day because I'm not going to, throw together something.
He needs a couple of
Okay.
days because something probably has to chill.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he exaggerates a little because he can
throw a burger together.
He can throw a burger together
Well,
in a
that's
couple
true.
hours. So
That's true.
Yeah.
But it does take a couple of hours, which is the scary thing.
Now it's time for
Cars Feast Table.
Space Table.
What? Apparently, there's a kid out there
That's what
somewhere
I'm laughing about,
who's going around the house going, "Cars Feast Table."
and I love that.
I am very proud to have started this trend
I love
among
that.
small children.
I wrote it. So, in keeping with the Around Grandfather Fire theme, I decided I would do s'mores. But
Being car.
it's Cars Feast Table.
Because he can't do anything without being extremely extra.
He's extremely extra.
So, these are the s'mores. I came up with this name on my own. Basically, it just names all the shit that's in it. So,
So listen
creative.
carefully.
Toasted marshmallow, sea salt caramel, bourbon maple bacon pretzel s'mores.
And I want them.
He's run these by us already, and they sound
like a fuck ton of work, but man, I want to try them.
They sound like a lot.
Yeah.
So first you make your own toasted coconut marshmallows.
Which I think sounds fun.
So
Describe.
The recipe for that will be on there. It's flaked coconut, sweetened, because you want that little bit of sweetness in it.
Especially considering what's going to come later.
Do you want shreds or do you want the little
the
kind?
flakes.
No, you want the flakes.
Flakes,
Yep.
okay.
Flakes.
3 envelopes of unflavored gelatin, 1.5 cups of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of light corn syrup, 2 tablespoons of honey, 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract.
Okay.
You toast the coconut in the oven.
Okay.
As you would, right? And then in a bowl, you stir up all the other stuff. Then you put it in a saucepan. Minus the coconut.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So you combine all of that other stuff together with actually a half a cup of water.
Okay.
Which isn't listed, but and over medium heat, and you cook it until it all dissolves. Then you turn up the heat to high. You cook that to 240 degrees Fahrenheit on a candy thermometer.
So I was going to say, you
need a candy thermometer on this one, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Then you take it off the heat, and you slowly pour it over top of your coconut. Right?
Okay.
Once you're doing that, you want to make sure that your fingers are wet. Otherwise, you're going to have sticky marshmallowy shit all over you.
Do you want this in like a cake pan kind of thing?
Yeah, so
or
a
cookie
9x13 baking dish.
Okay, so like a glass
baking
one,
sheet.
like we used to have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
baking glass dish.
Yep, and then you sprinkle the rest of the toasted coconut on top.
Okay.
And then you let the marshmallows sit out at room temperature uncovered for at least 8 hours.
Oh, okay. So this is not a dessert you could make in a couple
Casually,
hours.
no.
This is something you plan for.
Have I ever made anything that you could do casually? And then you're going to want to cut them with a pizza cutter.
Why?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Because you need something very sharp, and you want to dip it in water first so they don't stick to it.
That makes sense.
Okay?
We're going to need to sharpen our pizza cutter.
Yes, we are.
And then you're going to make your own...
Wait. I want to make a quick note here, just in case anyone's not clear. A candy thermometer and a meat thermometer, not the same thing.
Correct.
You are not going to be able to use a meat thermometer for this. You will need a candy thermometer.
Yep. And then you want to make your own caramel sauce, or caramel, depending on where you're from.
Where you're from, yep.
And
Whether you pronounce the extra A.
Right. And that is a cup of granulated sugar, half a cup of heavy cream, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt.
Okay.
See where all the sea salt's coming in?
There's a lot of sea salt.
So
sea
in a
salt
medium
caramel is
saucepan over medium-high heat, you combine the sugar and the water and stir it, and then you cook it without stirring until the sugar has turned a deep amber hue. That takes 10 to 12 minutes. None of this is going to be quick and easy.
Right.
Right.
Do not
Does
stir.
that crystallize it?
Yes. Yep, that actually crystallizes it back
Okay.
into a sugar, and that's bad.
Okay.
So you just want it to do that. While that's doing it, you want to warm up the heavy cream in a smaller saucepan.
Okay.
Okay? And then while the caramel is, when it's ready, it's that deep amber hue that you want, you're going to slowly whisk in the warm cream,
Okay.
right? And then you simmer it for another 2 to 3 minutes until it's smooth.
We're also going to need a new whisk.
Yes, we are.
So then you remove it from the heat, whisk in the butter and the salt to taste.
Okay.
And you're going to set that to the side because here comes the all-important part of this entire concoction.
The chocolate?
How long does the caramel need to how long does that need to sit?
Oh, you can, once it's off the heat, once it's become smooth, you can use it whenever. You
Oh,
can
okay.
serve it warm if you want.
Oh, okay.
But in our case, this is going to take a little bit more creativity. So then you're going to take bacon, and you're going to line
Your bacon of choice.
You're going to line a baking sheet with foil. Then you're going to place a cooking rack on top of the foil.
Okay.
Okay? And then you're going to lay the bacon out on top of the cooking rack.
Okay.
Overlapping it if you have to, it doesn't matter. You're going to use a half a pound of bacon or so. Thick cut. So you want like the really nice thick cut bacon. If you have a butcher near you, go get it from them.
Yeah.
Yep.
God, I miss our butcher.
And you're going to bake it at 400 degrees for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Then you're going to pull it all out. You're going to take some light brown sugar and maple syrup. And I'm suggesting that the maple syrup you use is, in particular, Bliss aged bourbon maple syrup.
Because if you could have that, why would you not?
Right. And then you're also, to that mixture, going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Okay? And so then you're going to coat both sides of this bacon that's been cooking in this mixture that you just made.
Okay.
Of the brown sugar.
So it's going to have to cool off a little bit.
Yep. Which is good. That's why I told you not to, heat it until combined until you'd already taken the bacon out.
Yeah.
Right.
So while you're making the cayenne,
the
brown
mixture,
sugar,
the bacon has been cooling.
The bacon
Exactly.
is cooling. Gotcha.
So you're going to coat it all in this mess, and then you're going to stick it back into the oven at 400 degrees for another 5 to 10 minutes until the bacon is crispy and the sauce has dissipated.
Okay.
It's all like
You
soaked
wanted to
up into it.
caramelize
Right.
and get it glazy.
Correct. Yep.
Nice.
And it'll be a little sticky. All right. Then you're going to pull that out of the oven, and you're going to take the bacon, the caramel sauce. So you're going to... I'm putting these on pretzel chips. So take a
Okay.
pretzel chip,
Can I
put
make
it on the bottom. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is the bacon cut in strips, or do you cut it into little?
I assume you cut it
once
into a
it's
size
crispy,
that fits
you
on.
can break
you
it.
can break it. Okay.
Yep.
Into a size that fits on a
Right.
pretzel
Okay.
crisp.
So you're going to take the pretzel crisps that you can buy at the store.
Right.
These we don't require you to make on your own.
No,
No.
my God, no.
I did look into how to do it.
Store-bought is fine.
I'm not going to do that. So you're going to take your pretzel crisp, you're going to lay bacon on it.
Okay.
Then you're going to put your caramel sauce
On top.
on top.
Okay.
And then you're going to put your toasted coconut marshmallow on top.
After it's 8 hours of
Yep.
setting.
Yep. And then you're going to put a pretzel on top of that.
Right. For
Is there
the
any
full
chocolate in this
s'more
anymore?
experience.
Hold on. It's
Okay.
coming.
It's coming.
You're going to make all of those and set them to the side as you're making them. After that, you're going to go out and buy Wilton's dark chocolate melts.
Ah.
Okay? And you're going to heat those up until they're melted. You're going to sea salt to taste, and you're going to throw in 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And then, so you're going to bring that chocolate up to about 115 degrees.
Candy thermometer again.
And then you're going to let it come down to about 85 degrees.
Okay, so you let it cool a
Yep.
little.
And then you're going to dip each of those pretzel s'mores into this chocolate
Okay.
and set them to the side.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And then you're going to stick it in your refrigerator or your freezer for about 20 minutes to set up. So it's not a hot s'more like
It's a
you would
cold
normally.
s'more.
It's a cold s'more.
But it
But
sounds
there's
fucking
so
delicious.
much deliciousness in it that you have to do it that way.
It sounds
Oh.
extremely decadent,
We
is
are
what it
making
sounds
this
like.
and you are helping me.
So again, the title of these things are Toasted Coconut Marshmallow Sea Salt Caramel Bourbon Maple Bacon Pretzel S'mores.
I can't believe you managed to say all
I
that.
know.
Twice!
That's like
All right.
one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people.
Pretty much.
And since we don't have an ending to this,
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
this? No.
No, we've never come up with an outro to Carsby's table, so.
I do like the stone information too, because when I was listening recently, I think it was the Liminal Space 2 one.
Yeah.
Electric
Electric
My
Boogaloo.
experience, yeah, my experience working, my wife and I owned a metaphysical shop. She's still got it online, but we don't have a physical location anymore. But the years of experience with the stones, it's amazing because people can have every reference book in the world. Sometimes they walk up and they tell you what's going on, and it's like, I don't care what any of the books say, you need selenite or you need this. And
Yeah.
the experience with the stones is so different than any guide can ever give you.
Yeah,
just
I've-
reading people's energy and that.
I've given up on using the correspondence tables for stones because, first of all, they all start with, this stone is very protective.
Yes.
Every single stone apparently is
protection,
very
love, or sex. Those are like the big three, or prosperity, I suppose.
At some point I went through and I was like, they can't all be. That's
Right.
not every stone is into that. They have tendencies and habits and preferences. But I'm also,
You mean stones are people too?
I know, yes, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And then, which is why I'm always like, go through and actually don't just order them off the internet, because then you might get a stone that has 0% interest in working with you.
Hey,
Zero
sometimes
fucks were given by that
sometimes
stone.
though, a stone will come to you
Yeah.
and just to get away from you.
Yes.
So I am not really, I don't work with stones a lot, so I do rely on Ode a lot to help me with stones. But I do pendulum work. So I was looking for a tiger's eye
tiger's eye.
pendulum.
She desperately wanted a tiger's eye
I wanted one
pendulum.
because I had worked with one in the past. And so we were at a psychic fair and there were vendors and I found this one.
And she was bringing me with her to verify, like, is this real tiger's eye?
Yeah, and so I found this one tiger's eye pendant, and it swang aggressively, and I got this "yes, take me" kind of vibe. And Ode was also like, "Yeah,
It's good swing.
good swing. It's gonna work with you. It's genuine tiger's eye." So within, I think, a month,
Yeah, you'd lost
maybe
it 3
2
times.
months, and the chain snapped.
Yeah.
And it was lost. But I found it the first time. And then another 2 months later, brand new chain.
Also snapped.
Stronger chain, snapped. I was like, okay, that...
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And it
just wanted
disappeared.
Yeah, we
it just
never found
wanted
it
to
again.
escape, apparently, from whoever hooked.
Had to get out into the wild.
Had to get out into the wild to whoever it was seeking. So yeah, they are people too.
When you work with herbs, I'm curious, how much do you rely on material that you've learned from books or whatever, and how much do you rely on intuition? Like if I'm making a protective, a lot of times I'll have to look at that person, I'll have my guides kind of feel their energy, and I would walk around and I would just open up jars and smell them, and I could tell from smell alone what someone needed for a protective bath. Didn't matter what the correspondences said.
Right.
How do you work with herbs? Is it similar? Or?
It depends. Sometimes I go through, a lot of it is I've already figured out which herbs go with what I want, and it's recorded in my grimoire. But sometimes I do still go and I go, okay, what, if I want...
You should go to her garden.
Yeah, I'll go to my garden. It's like, okay, who's going to be good for protection? Sometimes I'll go to a list, but generally I have an herb garden.
Right, well that makes it so much better.
And so I'll go to each herb. I have a relationship that I've built
Right.
with each herb, and I'm like, okay, which one of you? Rosemary is...
Who would like to work with me
Who
today?
wants to work with me today?
So herbs are people too?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
They're sweet little
Plants are
spirits.
very
That's
people.
the thing. This is the hilarious thing. When
I don't
was
even work with
younger-
plants, and plants are very people.
Yes, when I was younger, I did not have a green thumb. I couldn't grow anything to save my life. Once I started in the craft though, and I had a mentor who was like, no, plants are your allies. Nature is your ally. Learn the spirit of the plant and how to communicate and work with that spirit. You're gonna see a change, and I did. And once I recognized not just that it's a plant and that it has properties that are listed in a book
And needs.
I started actually interacting with that plant. I talk to my plants
Right.
and I ask it permission. May I work with you? Will you work with me on this? And so yeah, I do that. And I do have a bunch of dried herbs and I'll just kind of go, which will you?
I really appreciate that because I understand that. Like my favorite tree is black walnut.
I love black walnut.
I grew up in a house with like 4 of them in the front yard, so I've got a
me too.
relationship.
That was what
with
we had
black
in front
walnut.
of Granny's house, wasn't it? The black walnut.
And I
Yeah.
can use black walnut
Next to the mulberry
bark
tree.
or the walnuts themselves or whatever, things that no correspondence book is ever
Right,
going to give
exactly.
you because I've had a relationship with that plant, so I completely get where you're coming from.
So I really encourage people, yes, correspondences, books, they're great, but get to know what you're working with.
And I think the most important thing is to understand where that correspondence came from.
Yes.
If it was something somebody just threw out there because they got it from another list, or if it was something that they discovered over time, either intuitively or by the property of the thing, or there are ways to derive correspondences based on facts, and then there's just getting to know the thing.
Exactly.
And I think when you get to know the thing, that's going to vary from person to person, from relationship to relationship.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I get this question sometimes where people say, okay, well, what's the healing room? Okay. Potentially any of them. It depends. I mean, what relationship do you have with the runes? What are we talking about medically or otherwise? What kind of healing are you looking for? I mean, do I recommend Hagalaz for everything? No. But does Hagalaz have healing application? Yes. Depends on what kind of healing you need. I mean, when people say, okay, well, what plant do I need for healing? That's
too broad.
Yeah,
right.
Too broad. Yeah.
What kind of healing?
Yeah.
What kind of healing?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's even it's like pigeonholing one of you folks with the Caro tradition. Well, what does a Caro person do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we've got one. There's one ceremony called the despacho in the common parlance, which is a certain kind of offering ceremony that we make, and what you put in it depends on what you're trying to do and what spirit you're trying to be. Thousands of different types of despacho ceremony. It all depends on who's running it and what the situation is. And so it's like, yes, it's the catch-all. That's the ceremony we're going to go to the most often. But at the same point in time, each one's different.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, you're talking about your relationship. There's something that you brought up on podcasts and in workshops a lot. is your specific kinds of relationship with mountain spirits.
Right.
We're not in Peru.
Right, exactly. So there was a little translation there. The paths I was taught in, it's all mountain based. They're in the high mountains of the Andes, and obviously we're lacking in mountains in Michigan, at least in this area. But what I found is, relationship-wise and energetically, our Great Lakes are mountains flipped upside down and filled with water.
No, true.
Right.
Yeah.
So they reflect the same kind of, they use the same kind of energies in a different way, and so it's building that relationship that I found really fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah.
I
That's
love
really
the
cool.
energy of the lakes.
Oh, I know.
Oh
me too.
my God, I love to go.
And we
to
now
Lake
live
Gwyn
15 minutes from it.
Gwyn goes to Lake Michigan and is like, I feel so accepted. I go to Lake Michigan, I feel like she doesn't have any interest in me at all. She's very big, I'm very small, she doesn't give a fuck.
I love. Of course, it may be I'm a Pisces, so that may be why. But yeah, I love to go and just sit and experience the energy.
We go
of
to the
lady
beach
of
and
the
I'm
lake
just...
is how I perceive is just this beautiful.
Right,
gorgeous lake.
she's like this. I feel this beautiful, motherly, welcoming energy. I'm just like,
I'm gonna fucking
woo.
eat you.
She's 0% fucks given about me.
Even Superior.
She'll accept my interest, and that's it.
Even Superior, she's a fierce mama, is how I feel. Because I've at some point in my life, I've been to all the lakes. Not as a pagan. I've only been to Lake Michigan as a pagan. But I can remember the experience at each lake that I've had, and each one has a different feeling to it.
Right.
And Superior does. She's a fierce bitch. I mean, you don't mess with Superior.
Is your experience with that lake's energy is going to vary differently because the spirits of the lake itself interact with the spirit of the place where you interact with the lake.
Oh, true.
So,
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
How you resonate with a certain peninsula might be fantastic on Lake Michigan, where you might
Yeah.
different energy.
Yeah.
Or Sarenth might, but you move down a half mile where it's an inlet where a little stream's coming in. All of a sudden, this is my spot, but
Yeah.
you don't feel it anymore.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
That's a very
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
because we've only really been to the one beach
we
on Lake
have.
Michigan.
We should check out a couple more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to 2 different parts of Lake Michigan, and having been on its easier to access coast, there's much more of an open, oh, come on, come play me. And then my family and I were going to actually do a pilgrimage to Lake Superior and stayed in the yurt for a week. And the energy of Lake Michigan, when we stopped off at this little culvert where you could walk down to it and then come back up, totally different energy, totally different experience, and woo.
Yeah.
Just this raw fierceness, whereas the public beach access is very, oh yeah, come on.
Yeah, the Lake Michigan
Come
energy,
on,
like
Nicole.
Sleeping Bear Dunes versus Chicago versus my family has a cabin in the Upper Peninsula, so we're on the northern side of Lake Michigan, and those 3 energies are completely different, and it has a lot to do with where the land interacts with the lake spirit.
That makes sense.
Place.
Yeah.
I'm having to get used to going to the lake. I'm from the coast,
Oh,
so I was
Yeah,
born on
he's-
the East Coast
He's,
and I
he's,
lived
in
on
an
the West
ocean, he's
Coast.
from an ocean
Gotcha.
place.
So I'm from an ocean place. So I'm like, it's a big lake. Who the hell cares? You know.
I love I much prefer the lakes to the oceans. I'll be
and
quite honest.
and I've lived here 12 years now, 13 years, something like that
God,
in
it's been
Michigan.
so long.
It's been a long time.
And this is the longest we've ever lived anywhere
Oh wow!
in our
grew
entire
up-
life.
When I was a kid, we moved all the time. It was very weird for me to set down roots.
Yeah. The first time I went to Lake Michigan, and it had probably been, I'd probably lived here 7 years or so, and I went with a friend who's a hip-hop artist, and he was doing a show, and so we were hanging out, and we went out to Lake Michigan, and you could literally see a foot of the lake before there was fog bank. And I'm like, big deal, you know? And then probably 3 or 4 years later, I'm out with another friend driving around, and he's like, we were in Grand Haven. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've never actually seen Lake Michigan. He's like, oh, well, you know, just drive the car. You're going to now, because you're in my car and you have no choice.
Right.
And we got out there, and you could see as far as you could see.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see land
To
on the
the
other side. And I
horizon,
was like,
yeah.
oh my God, this is really
It is
is
big.
different than what I expected.
Oh yeah.
You know, because I expect to, like, you know, drive to the
Chicago?
beach, drive to the beach and go, oh, look, there's Wisconsin over there. You know?
You're dramatically overestimating the ability of your eyes.
I think
Legos
he's
was your
looking.
elven IC.
Oh, I'm loving the LOTR. Loving it. We are connected here, brother. We are connected. Oh my God. Well, you know, you look at the map of Michigan, and the lakes do make it look like they're a lot closer to things than they are.
Maps are inherently deceptive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, one of the things that really kind of brought it home when we were starting to plan this pilgrimage and do all this was, looking at how scientists, I forget the discipline, but they basically considered the lakes like freshwater oceans for purposes of how they operate.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking...
They have tides and...
And rhythms and movements and everything else. I mean, look at any really good shots of the tides rolling in from any of the Great Lakes. And,
there's power there.
Right.
Especially
power.
winter waves, I think,
my
are
God.
really cool because you
Right,
can
that's what
see
Superior
them
is
freeze
like.
and,
Yes.
and it's,
Superior's like, I just kill you and I won't even care.
She won't even notice.
That's right.
Yes.
Gordon Lightfoot's song was spot on.
All right,
It's
yeah.
Superior, Superior never gives up her dead. You do not mess with this lake. Because I remember the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I was in 3rd grade when it happened, so it was a big deal.
Right.
And
you just dated yourself. A lot of our listeners are going to go, who the fuck is Gordon Lightfoot?
Okay, babies, I'm the mama for a reason. I'm 54. I don't give a fuck what my age is. There you go. I'm a crone. But yeah, so I remember the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald that happened on Lake Superior. And if you haven't heard Gordon Lightfoot's Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, listen to it because it tells the story perfectly. It recounts
I have seen
the story.
museum exhibits about the wreck of the Edmund
Yes.
Oh, were
Fitzgerald.
you up at the Shipwreck Museum? Oh,
But
that's
it
a
not only
crazy
talks
place,
about the
man.
tragedy that happened, it talks about the power
Yeah.
of Superior. And it talks about the fact that if you do not respect that power, you will pay the consequence.
I got to tell you, anytime I'm traveling within the state here, or even around, like down to Chicago or whatever, that's when you make prayers to.
Yep.
I make prayers to Superior, because Superior
Oh,
is the boss.
I thought for a minute he was saying Gordon Lightfoot.
Sorry, I'm not going to rule anything out. But, no, you make prayers to Lake Superior, because Lake Superior is the boss.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it will tell the other land spirits what's up.
Yep. And I think, people from other states don't realize that they're called the Great Lakes for a reason.
I mean, I consider each Great Lake their own goddess.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do too.
And one of the things that I was tasked with, and I'm putting this on the air so that I can't escape it,
All right, accountability. Hold you accountable, Sarenth.
is
Power, authority,
At
accountability.
some point, I have to make pilgrimages to each lake. I've got 2 parts of the poem that I have to write in an epic fashion. So this is one of the things that the Great Lakes is asking me to do, and then I'm going to kick myself in the ass and eventually get it done.
You're going to do it.
Yeah.
So, if you
do it.
have a nice beach house on one of the Great Lakes, and you would like to host Sarenth Odinson,
There you go.
please email to
gmail.com. But seriously, though, I think that Gordon Lightfoot's song, Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, is one of the songs that I sang in full to Superior when I met her, and it's pretty much a devotional song.
Yeah,
It is.
it is. It is. It really is. Did you hear that, babies? I'm going to say it again. Listen to The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot. And then go learn about the lakes, the Great Lakes, because they are, as you said, they do have a goddess for each lake. They are a power each unto their own. And I think if you go to your own area where you're living, you will find that there are powerful local gods in your land and in your seas that are around you, your lakes, your
rivers,
ponds,
your ponds,
Go get to know them.
And it gives you a whole new perspective because lagos, a lot of people, it's the healing rune, it's the gentle water rune. Cool, go up to a Great Lake, intone lagos, and then wait.
Yep, just wait.
have fun. I think you're spot on too with the local spirits thing, because when people come to me and say, "How do I learn more about shamanism?" No books, no anything else. The first 2 things I'm going to tell you: A, do you have an ancestor altar? B, someplace near where you live, you just always feel at peace and connected to. Go make offerings and say, "Hey, tree, rock, river, lake, will you protect me on this stuff I'm about to embark on?" Start that relationship right there, because no matter where you live, there's things around you that are willing to work with you. You just have to seek that relationship.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can even start in your own backyard.
Yeah,
If you happen to live on
even
property.
better.
We moved to a new place that has a yard in September, October. And so when we got there, even when we were visiting the place, I felt very welcomed by the land spirits there, as well as the house whites. We made an offering to the land spirits while we were there, and they have accepted us. And I think
Once a year,
more
more offerings. That's
Yep.
all they wanted.
That's just once a
We
year.
offered more. That was
Yep.
what they wanted.
You know, I think that's important to build that relationship with the land spirits where you live and that are around you. Like you said, if you want to get to know land spirits,
Go out
Right.
into
go
the
out
land.
Go
into the
outside.
wild.
Yeah.
Go into the wild and
But
get to that
there
place.
are suburban spirits too, and urban
there are.
spirits.
There
you know,
are, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
wherever you are, there are spirits.
When we had our metaphysical shop, we were looking for a location. It was downtown Jackson, right? And so the Grand River runs through Jackson. So I made prayers to the Grand River. But the other one, we have a really old theater called the Michigan Theater, and they call it the Gallon Mechanics. So I went to the theater, and I'm like, you are the queen of this downtown. Help us find a space. And I made offerings there, and I think we found our space within a week after that.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
You can do those urban spirits as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just open yourself to the possibilities.
Yeah.
I think is a big thing.
Yeah, I am not an urban dweller. I don't feel comfortable in cities. They feel very claustrophobic to me. But I got lost one time in downtown Ann Arbor, and I'm like, I'm walking around for 20 minutes, half hour. I don't know where the fuck I am. All right, fine. So what's the closest thing? Oh, there's a tree growing out of the ground that had those little grates around. Okay, well, I make a little offering there. And, okay, land spirits, which way should I be going? So I shut my eyes for a minute. Spirits go, okay, that way. 10 minutes, I find my damn car.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Now, see, I'm exactly the opposite. So I'm an urban guy. I was
Yeah.
born and raised in Washington, D.C. I've lived in L.A., Atlanta, Miami,
Nashville.
We've, broadly speaking, been large city people.
Yeah. And so now to live in a town of like 4,000.
So
And
small.
and just the property that we live on is maybe it's 200 families.
Yeah.
In the property where we live, not even 200, 180 something. Feels very like weird to me. There's nothing. Like if you want to go to the grocery store, you have to go to the next town over because there's not a grocery store in town.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town,
Yeah, me
and
too.
this is even smaller.
You grew up in a village.
Yeah.
It was legally a village.
But for me, like I'm used to being able to walk out of my apartment or row house, and across the street is a grocery store.
Yeah.
And so I would shop daily.
Yeah.
You know, I would
You
just
can't
go
do that.
buy what I wanted to buy for that night and bring it home, put it in the refrigerator and go out and do my stuff and then come home and cook. So it's an entirely different experience.
Yeah.
It's been very weird for me. So
You had some culture shock.
Yeah.
I've considered myself an urban druid until now.
Now you live in the middle of
Now
nowhere.
Right.
figure out
Now I
how
can
to-
just drop the urban from it and just say druid and not have to worry about it because I'm in the country basically.
Yeah.
And our
got some
property backs up
scree
to
right
a huge.
behind the
Yeah.
We've told our listeners the squirrel story. Apparently, a squirrel came up to Carr and dropped a nut at his feet,
And then ran away.
and then ran away.
Yeah, we have the black squirrels down there.
Yeah.
So we figured, well, okay, either it's a welcome.
It was he had just started
Yeah.
at the property,
Right.
and winter was coming on. So in my opinion, that was the start saving your pennies, squirreling away your shit.
Yeah.
I share one real quick. This is one of my favorite stories. It's not even about me. It's another student of my teacher. And in our tradition, we have these stone called kuya, and we empower them and make sacred objects and do many things with them. And one of them, there's a group of 3 that when they're getting empowered, they get left outside overnight. So another student of Mateo's, she had bought this beautiful piece of quartz. Just spent a decent amount of money. Just a gorgeous piece of quartz. Left it out in the woods. The next morning when she came back, it was gone. A raccoon had taken it and left her a bottle cap. In a fit of anger, she threw the bottle cap off in the woods, and we were like,
That was a mistake.
no, that was like the most powerful
Yeah.
bottle cap in the
Yeah,
history
yeah.
ever, and
Yeah.
he just tucked it out into the woods.
All the football fans are like, no!
That was your payment for your fancy quartz.
Right, exactly.
That's
I mean,
great.
that would have been great, though. You go, show everybody your magical
Bottle cap.
That would have gone straight on the altar. Man.
No doubt, right?
Oh my God, that's amazing. Oh goodness.
Odes! Stone! Corner!
Lovely, thank you.
You're welcome.
Today, in honor of Around Grandfather Fire, I'm going to be discussing fire quartz. It's also known as hematoid quartz, ferruginous quartz, or harlequin quartz. So fire quartz is typically clear quartz, which contains inclusions of iron. That iron can come from various sources. It's commonly, probably most commonly, from hematite, which is why it's sometimes called hematoid quartz.
Oh, that makes sense.
But it can also be from inclusions of goethite or limonite. Goethite and limonite are both bog iron minerals, which means they're produced by the weathering process. They're not only found in bogs, but they are some of the minerals that are the iron-bearing minerals that are found in bogs. Consequently, they're a renewable resource.
So like a peat moss bog?
Yes, a peat moss bog. So what happens, how this works, how bog iron works is so through the weathering process, minerals are dissolved into their soluble and insoluble components, right? The insoluble iron mineral components become goethite or limonite or other hydrogenated minerals, right? These trickle down, essentially, into bogs. When you cut the peat from a bog, because peat is used as fuel in places where there are a lot of bogs, when you cut the peat, if you peel back the top layer of the peat in a bog that has bog iron mineral presence, you can find little pea-sized nodules of bog iron. So it's very, very tedious to collect all this iron, but once you do, it's very, very easy to smelt with and to work into usable tools.
Do you think that's where like early iron workers got their iron from?
Yes, that is where early pre-Roman iron forging came from, was from bog iron.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which explains the Celt stuff.
Exactly.
In Ireland and Scotland.
And in Scandinavia. Yeah. So that's where early ironworks came from, was from bog iron. And once every generation or so, you can reharvest the same bog because new weathered iron will have accumulated in the bog.
That is so
That's really
fascinating.
cool.
It's amazing what bogs have done for humanity.
Yeah, they're honestly, for being extremely hostile environments, they're like very valuable to human communities.
Absolutely, and for a number of reasons, including historical.
Yeah.
So goethite and limonite are two of the minerals that are often found as bog irons, and they are also two of the minerals that are most commonly inclusions in fire quartz.
Okay.
So inclusions in fire quartz range in color from red to orange to brown, and they are typically in clearly defined shapes inside a piece of relatively clear quartz. Examples that have more diffuse inclusions that sort of color the whole stone so that you get sort of just a muddy red color in your quartz, especially when they're opaque instead of translucent, are instead usually marketed as red, strawberry, or tangerine quartz.
Oh, interesting.
But technically, these are all the same kind of quartz. They're just clear quartz with iron inclusions.
Okay.
Just they're marketed differently because they have different appearances.
Gotcha.
And it's basically impossible to tell what type of mineral inclusion you have in an individual stone by like looking at it, right?
Gotcha.
So you won't be able to tell
You'd
if you
have
have
to do it under a microscope or something.
Yeah, you'd have to do like science to it
Right.
to figure out if you had hematite, goethite, or limonite inclusions.
Gotcha. But we know there's an ite.
There's an ite in there.
There's an
somewhere.
ite
Yeah.
in there.
Because fire quartz it's one of those mixed minerals where you have two minerals that have, strong qualities of their own. And because it's very hard to tell which mineral you have in a piece of fire quartz is an extremely wide-ranging in terms of its personality.
Okay.
Right? It's slightly tunable because what they all have in common is the clear quartz, and clear quartz by nature is a highly tunable stone.
Right.
So fire quartz will be tunable a little bit, but not to the extent a clear, unincluded piece of clear quartz would be.
Right.
Because most of the tuning has already happened through the inclusion of the other minerals, of the iron-bearing minerals. Yeah.
Of the ite.
Of the ite, yes. The commonalities that you'll find in fire quartz is that these are all iron-bearing minerals, so they all bring iron properties with them.
Okay.
So they all bring strength. They're all relatively energetic, like positive, like active. A lot of fire quartz has sort of a sun or a solar association. So if you do a lot of work with solar deities or for solar festivals, fire quartz is good for that. Often got a masculine tone because iron has a very masculine tone.
Gotcha.
But the thing that I think is really interesting about fire quartz is, although it's called fire quartz, so you'd think its elemental affiliation would be with fire, right?
Right.
Because goethite and limonite are bog iron minerals, they're water affiliated.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
So those inclusions have water affiliations through the bog.
Interesting.
And iron has fire-earth associations, right? And quartz has earth-air associations.
Okay.
So you get a very
lot of things.
elementally versatile stone. Mm-hmm. This is one of those things where it definitely varies from piece to piece. You're definitely going to have to like go and touch up on a whole bunch of pieces of fire quartz
Right.
to sort of
Find
figure
a piece
out,
that works best.
yeah,
The
to
one that's
sort of
really gonna work with you.
That's going to work with you, and that's going to be tuned to the element you're looking for. Because like if you need a piece of fire quartz that's like strongly fire affiliated, you can absolutely find one. But you're going to have to go searching because some of them will be leaning a little more in the water direction. Some of them will be leaning a little more in an earth direction.
Gotcha.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Fascinating. Wow.
Yeah. The one other thing I can say for fire quartz is that if you're in a situation where you can't light a candle because of a smoke detector or it's not safe for you to be around fire for whatever reason,
Like if you're in a hotel.
if you're in a hotel, if you just have like a pyromania problem where it's not safe for you to be around fire,
Yep.
Right.
you can use a fire-attuned piece of fire quartz, which is still probably the most common elemental attunement for fire quartz.
Right.
Even though I do suggest like go touch up on them
Right.
and double check because some of them will have a water affiliation. But if you can get a fire-attuned piece of fire quartz, you can sub that in for a candle. If you're,
interesting.
yeah, because it's got enough of that energy in it.
Right.
And especially if you get a piece of nice clear quartz that has a really strong inclusion inside it, if you can hold that up to the light and just turn that, you
it
can
looks
sort
like
of
it's flickering.
you can sort of simulate a candle flame experience,
very
which could be very
cool.
useful for you in like a meditation practice
Yeah.
or for spell work if you need a candle but can't have one.
Right.
That's very cool. I like that idea.
So
Could you also get a candle and stick the fire quartz on top of it so it looks like a flame?
yeah, yes, yeah, you
Yeah.
could get like an unlit candle,
Yeah, yeah.
and put a small piece of fire quartz where the wick is.
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
absolutely work. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good way for, for all the preparations you've done for the candle to get it ready. You can
Yeah,
still
yeah.
do this without having to actually burn it.
Yeah, if you wanted to dress a candle
Right.
and everything, yeah, you could absolutely do that. In fact, you could dress your candle and everything and then could melt like the top of the candle against like an iron
Yep.
Attach
and then
the-
attach the stone to the top while the wax is still warm. Yeah, and I think that would work
and
very
then that would be
effectively.
something you could use over and over.
Exactly. Yeah.
For similar spells.
All right, that's it for Odes! Stone! Corner!
That was the best one so far.
I know. I was gonna like poke him to see if I could run out of air or something. You're a goofball. So tell me a little bit more about your path, because I don't know what your path is.
Sure. So I am Carol, lineage, tradition. We call it a Paco as opposed to a shaman. Essentially, the short version is that when the Inca Empire was invaded by the conquistadores, the priests went high up into the mountains to hide. And they're living at levels that are so high that humans, you're right on the edge of where humans need oxygen bottles. And obviously they knew they were there, but the conquistadores didn't, and they would come down and go back up and that sort of thing. And it wasn't until interest started in Machu Picchu and that sort of thing that they kind of were more known about, and it would come down more frequently. And so these are the traditions that are left over from the priest class of the Inca Empire. And where they're at now, like so many places in the world, there's a lot of poverty. And so the young folk, when they were coming down to go to Cusco or Lima or something, they were getting much better jobs, and they weren't interested in staying up in the mountains and pursuing traditions. And so the elders kind of started sharing it with outsiders a little bit, and through them they taught my teacher Mateo, and Mateo taught me, and now I have students of my own. So
Interesting. What drew you to that?
I wish I could tell you. I really don't. I mean, because my background is Norse and Slavic, and so obviously those incorporate into my practices as well. But this will date me a little bit. I think my first real forays into paganism were through AOL chat rooms.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I had this.
I'm right there with you.
I had the screen name Two Snakes, which is still on some of my badges and that sort of thing when I go to pagan events. And there was another person in the room named the screen name Snake Willow. And wow, you live in Ann Arbor. Wow, you have been taught in all these various traditions, including these shamanic traditions. Okay, you're going to teach me. And at that point, Mateo said, I am not taking on any students. So about a year and a half of badgering, I became her first student. And And yeah, that's where we ended up now.
Very cool.
Yeah, so now I'm at the point now where I'm integrating their traditions into the more local traditions. I'm having more contact with the Ojibwe elders. I'm learning how I incorporate all these different things together. And I'm actually a carrier of 2 medicine bundles. I have the one that I made myself, and there was one from an elder in Peru that through happenstance ended up in the United States, and I'm the carrier of that one as well until I can return it to Peru. So
Very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And how did you get into your path, Sarenth?
Kicking and screaming. So originally when I was a Catholic until I was age 18, started investigating psychic abilities, phenomena, that kind of thing around age 13, looking into ESP. Because I was having experiences the Catholic Church had a really hard time explaining. Okay, fine. I had a Wiccan classmate who talked with me on and off about, and I felt really uncomfortable with the pentacle at the time because,
That's the devil's stuff.
I credit Kat to this day of getting in my face and saying, you need to check your bias and you need to do your damn research. And I went, oh, fucking K. So I went on what was the internet at the time and did a lot of research and did a lot of printing off of articles and did a lot of soul searching and found that I had a goddess who was calling to me, and that goddess was Bridget at the time. Around age 18, I had a sit down with Yahweh and said, okay, I think this is where we part ways. Had a very amicable separation, despite being a confirmed Catholic, and felt released from my oaths and went on my way. Sometime later, about a year or so after this, I ran into my first teachers. I became a priest of Anubis. I was a ceremonial magician, and I didn't want a damn thing to do with the Norse thank you very much. I'd seen enough of the blood and iron crowd that I didn't want to have any interactions, because I've known enough racist jackals who were wearing the symbols and spouting the blood and soil shit. I don't want nothing to do with that. Odin grabbed me kicking and screaming after a really powerful meditation experience. I think I've talked about this on both our shows before, so go listen to the shows. But long story short, after a really powerful God's guided meditation experience, I realized that I couldn't ignore Odin anymore, and then started following him about 11 years ago now, and immediately got launched into doing priest work with him and doing shaman work with him. Now, I fought that label tooth and nail, and poor Jim, we had only recently met when he had landed the song, and I'm like, what do I do? This isn't my word! That's nice. So the word I'm more comfortable with is Veterverker, or spirit worker, and so Odin's been just kicking me in the ass longer since. About the time where he dragged me onto the path is where I met my elder, and she got my head straight and got me to where I am now.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Okay, earlier when we were talking, you guys said that the word shaman or shamanic has been kind of co-opted and is being used like vicariously. What do you mean by that? Is it like just,
in the words of Raven Caldera, it's a public horse.
Is somebody, are people using it inappropriately? Are they just saying it sounds cool, so
some
this is
people
it?
are. Because it's become a really great marketing word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone can be a Reiki and they're only getting a certain amount of clients, but all of a sudden they're a shamanic Reiki practitioner and they see a lot more clients. And you can sell shamanic doodads that you couldn't sell otherwise, and this and that and the other thing. And so it is a really charged word. And Sarenth and I, one of our first episodes, we really sat down and unpacked it. And we are very conscious of the fact that we use this word because that's the word that people are going to know.
It's the word people recognize.
Find us, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But we're very conscious. I will allow the term Shaman Jim to be used because other people call me that. That's not my choice.
Right.
But I usually refer to myself as a shamanic practitioner.
Yep.
It means I have some of the skill set, but I don't belong to a culture where shamanism is part of the overall culture.
And say again what the term for what you do is?
Paco.
Paco. Okay.
Yeah, we considering that it took me about 6 months to accept when Odin first grabbed a hold of me and said, "You're going to use this damn word." How much fighting it took, and I'm still not comfortable with the term. And spirit worker gets the idea across well enough. I'd have to explain what the hell Veterverker is between explaining the Norse and the German,
right?
Or just the Norse anyway. And so it's taken some time for me to really kind of chew down and digest that. But the question at the end of the day, and one that Odin kept raising is anybody going to know what the hell you're talking about?
Right.
How are the people who need you going to find you?
Yeah,
Right.
that was his consistent point. That was actually a point that Jim kept raising with me was, okay, that's great that you're having this conflict and all, but is anybody going to know what the hell you're doing?
Right. And once they know you, then you can unpack the term a little bit. But if that's how they're going to find you.
It's interesting because we're meeting with Ken Day
Oh, right.
at 7 tonight, so talking about shamanism.
Yeah.
So,
We'll probably continue to have this conversation.
Exactly. So I guess that would be my next question is, okay, so I didn't realize that the term is being co-opted to just be a marketing tool.
Absolutely.
And so how does somebody who is honestly interested or seeking a shamanic practice or someone to help them through they're seeking a shaman, how do they tell the fakes from the real thing?
This is fraught.
Right. I would say there's a couple things that you're going to look for. You're going to look for the people that use the term themselves, that call themselves a shaman, seem to have some sort of joy or revelry or use it in a boastful way, right? If you unpack the term, really it's about a spirit worker that serves a community by interacting with the spirits. And the community I serve might be the pagan community, might be humans, it might be the rock people. It all depends. But if they're not, you can also know them by their actions. If they're not in service to a community, putting that community's needs before their own, kind of got to question what they're doing.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like a taboo thing for them to make money off of doing service. That depends on communities. So it's also, you got to really question which community they're part of, because Korean shamans are going to have their own thing. They're going to be called their own thing. Mudang is one of the ones that I'm familiar with. The Evenk are going to have their own, like, here's the qualifications. You know, the Northern tradition lineage that I'm part of has its own qualifications. And if I can't vouch for you, I'm sorry, you're just not one. And that's where boundaries and communication really come into play. It's where podcasts come into play. It's where these resources really play an important part, because separating the ice cream from the bullshit is really hard. And everybody's insisting the bullshit's ice cream.
Right.
And you can always ask around.
Right.
You're going to know people.
Right, there should be, your shaman should have references.
Right.
Exactly. I'm going to be able to give you references to people that have come to my ceremonies. I'm going to be able to give you references to people that I've done like a cleansing for or something, not following my tradition. Heck, some of them aren't pagan or anything, but they'll still be able to give me a good reference. I think that is the kind of thing that you've got to look for.
Okay.
how are you doing your fire ceremony here?
That's a secret.
This won't be heard until afterwards.
So
But now I'll know.
the last one that I did at Pagan Fest is being a template for it.
Okay.
So at Pagan Fest, we were having a lot of rain.
Yes. Yeah, I remember.
And so they asked me, do you want to still do the fire ceremony? Well, my students and I, it doesn't matter. If it's a blizzard, I'll be outside doing it. I don't care. It doesn't make any difference to me. But I know a lot of people that come to Pagan Fest enjoy the fire ceremony. And some of them have mobility limitations, right? So I'm like, I don't want to deny them the ceremony, yet at the same point in time, I want to have them be able to access it, that sort of thing. So what we're working with is a little bit of chaos magic influence. Thanks, Andrea. We are using a certain charged crystal. We're going to be visualizing the entire ceremony and get people into a very deep altered state. And that crystal is going to capture that moment of transformation. Then when everybody's done, we'll go outside and actually have a really quick 5-minute fire.
Gotcha.
Release.
Gotcha. Okay, so thank you guys so much for spending time with us, and this has been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
this has been a fun
so if
conversation.
people want
I've
to
enjoyed this.
find Around Grandfather Fire, they can go to...
You can go to anchor.fm or go to your favorite podcast app and just type it in. It should show right up.
Okay.
And we'll link this in the links under our episode too
Yep.
on the website, if you get our episodes through the website, although I don't think most people do.
It's like
And then you
website.
can find us at
website?
I know.
3pagansandacat.com.
Yeah, 3 pagansandacat.com is
Yep.
the website.
And your website.
Otherwise, y'all know where to get it.
So we are aroundthegrandfatherfire.fm or anchor.fm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And then for your email contact.
You can find me at jim@thewanderingowl.com. You can find me on Instagram as Wandering White Hat, or you can find me as James at the Owl on Twitter.
So mine is, my website is sarenth.wordpress.com. You can get a hold of me at sarenth@gmail.com, Sarenth, and I'm on Twitter at Sarenth.
Nice.
His blog is also good, by the way. I do read that.
Surprise!
Thank you.
That's a shocker.
Yep. All right, so that's it.
All
Yep.
right.
Thank everybody for listening.
Thank
This
you.
has been Three Pagans and a Cat and Around Grandfather Fire together. Around a brown table in a hotel room, but it's close enough.
We're doing our best.
Yep.
It's a metaphorical fire.
All right, bye.
Our third commercial today comes from our Tiger Crystal for Apothecary Teas. This shop produces fragrant, aesthetically beautiful teas to delight all the senses with handcrafted tea blends from white to red to green. Their current collection, Star-Crossed Lovers, unites the ancient warring houses of coffee and tea with a strategic Earl Grey and Coffee Bean Romeo, scattered with blue cornflower and blushing Juliet in rubeus and Coffee Bean with rose petals, and the lush gunpowder green and Coffee Bean with lemon balm, ginger, and anise, faded that brings them together. Do yourself a flavor and splash out for a 7-ounce bag at $18 before you find yourself staring mournfully into an empty 3-ounce bag that once held a glorious tea. Find them at apothecaryteastore.com or on Facebook at Apothecary Teas, LLC.
I think that's it, though, right? I mean,
Yeah, we did all our segments.
Yep.
Well, you have to tell people, where to find
Oh,
us,
yeah.
all that
I think
stuff.
didn't I do that at the end of the Grandfather
Yeah,
Fire?
you did.
Did you?
You said, here's our website.
Yeah, and they did theirs.
Yep.
So I don't need to do that again.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
we're good.
So I can stop recording.
Yep.
Yay! Are we done?
You've been listening to Three Pagans and a Cat. Find out more information at www.threepagansandacat.com.